So as much as the US gets a bad rap, did you know the US actually leads in carbon emission reduction? Yes. This Forbes article by a senior contributor, Robert Rapier, titled, "Yes, the US leads all countries in reducing carbon emissions." Last week, in an interview with Fox News, and the EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, claimed, "We are leading the nation, the world, with respect to our CO2 footprint in reductions." The Washington Post fact-checked this claim and rated it 3 Pinocchios, which means they rate the claim mostly false. They further wrote that Pruitt's usage of data appeared to be a deliberate effort to mislead the public. I agree that this is a nuanced issue, but the data mostly supports Pruitt's claim. According to the 2017 BP Statistical Review of World Energy, since 2005, annual US carbon dioxide emissions have declined by 758 million metric tons. That is by far the largest decline of any country in the world over that time span, and is nearly as large as the 770 million metric ton decline for the entire European Union. By comparison, the second largest decline during that period was registered by the UK, which reported 170 million metric ton decline. At that same time, China's carbon dioxide emissions grew by 3 billion metric tons, and India's grew by 1 billion metric tons. Thus, I don't think it's the least bit misleading to claim that the US is leading the world in reducing carbon dioxide emissions. The Washington Post gets into per capita emissions, and indeed, despite the decline, US per capita emissions are still among the highest in the world. However, the Washington Post story claimed the United States may have the largest decrease in carbon emissions, but it's still the largest per capita emitter. That's not accurate either. According to the World Bank data, US per capita carbon dioxide emissions ranks 11th among countries. So we are not the largest per capita emitter, but we do emit 2.2 times as much on per capita basis as, say, China. But China has 4.3 times as many people. That matters from an overall emissions perspective. China's lower per capita carbon dioxide emissions are more than offset by its greater population. So China emits over 70% more carbon dioxide annually than the US. The story quoted Pruitt a second time, saying, quote, "We have reduced our CO2 footprint by over 18%, almost 20% from 2000 to 2014. End quote. The Post also disputes this claim, citing EPA numbers that stated energy-related CO2 emissions have fallen by 7.5% since 2000. I'm not sure why anyone is using numbers from 2000, as US carbon dioxide emissions continued to rise until 2005. That's when they began to fall. Between 2005 and 2017, US carbon dioxide emissions fell by 12.4% on an absolute basis and by 19.9% on a per capita basis. The per capita number is certainly consistent with Pruitt's claims, though the date range isn't. When the Post asked the EPA about the discrepancy, a spokesperson said Pruitt was, quote, referencing the CO2 footprint from energy-related industries, based on a report from the Association of Air Pollution Control Agencies that says that per capita energy-related carbon dioxide emissions were down 18.1% on average nationally. While the US had the highest overall decline in carbon dioxide emissions, we didn't have the largest percentage decline. Many European countries experienced declines of 20% to over 30%. At the same time, China's carbon dioxide emissions increased by 50%, and India's increased by 88%. I understand that the Washington Post wants to push the fact that the US is still a high per capita emitter, but that doesn't contradict the points that Pruitt made. Finally, one item left unsaid was the reason US emissions have declined. It's no coincidence that the US emissions started to decline in 2005. That was the year US shale gas production began a decade-long growth spurt. Renewables also contributed, but the vast majority of emissions declined in the US can be attributed directly to natural gas substituting for coal in the power sector. See the article, Don't Blame Renewable Energy for Dying US Coal Energy, for a deeper dive on this topic. My verdict? Pruitt's claim is entirely defensible, and on a nuanced topic like this, certainly shouldn't be considered mostly false. I think the Washington Post got this one wrong. We'll go to new Robert Rapier. I agree. All the data shows that the US actually is leading the way. Whether you think this is good or not, or whether we should be wasting our time on it, in the energy industry, this is a big deal and there's a lot of pressure for this. And the US is always painted as the bad guy. But to be honest, the US actually leads the world in reducing carbon emissions. So anytime someone gets all over you and tries to tout some other country, you go back to this article, find the data, and let them know we're actually doing our part. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comment. A link to this article and more will be in the description. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that you can continue to get energy science, industry, and regulatory news that you need for your work or investments in energy. And remember, with science in our hands, fossils at our feet, knowledge in our heads, and God at the helm, the future is ours to build.